like to call this meeting to order. First, at the December 12th meeting, we had Gary Gelser was appointed by the council to fill the vacancy seat created by Vice Mayor Georgia Lord's resignation until such seat is filled by a successful candidate in the election process, which is going to be held March. At this time, Judge Simonson will give Councilmember Gary Gelser the oath of office. And Gary, down in front.
It's okay right here. More an appropriate tie, I see. Okay. Raise your right hand. Thank you. Please repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Gary Gelser,
Do affirm
do affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and defend them against all enemies whatever,
and defend them against all enemies whatever.
and that I will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of council member
discharge the duties of council member
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So I do affirm.
So I do affirm.
Congratulations. Best of luck.
I want to take a few minutes to address everyone here. First thing I'd like to do is thank my fellow council members for the great honor that you have bestowed upon me. I've sat in the audience many a time, and I've made comments many a time, both formally and informally, and I appreciate the fact that you've allowed me to join you on the dais for even a short period of time. Secondly, I'd like to thank the staff, all the people that I know from my previous life as a commissioner on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and from just being a citizen, and from now being a newly appointed council person. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and it's been instrumental and eye-opening, and I appreciate all your help in learning the intricacies of the city and how it operates. The third, I'd like to thank the citizens for allowing me this opportunity, but I'd also like to tell you that, one, I'm going to do my best, even in this short period of time. But two, I want to charge the citizens and ask you to do something for me. We have a very important election coming up, and there are lots of candidates who are running for 5 offices for the city, which is really unique. We could change entirely the council as a result of this election. And I charge you to get to know the candidates. I charge you to ask them specific questions on what they would do in the future. And I charge you to vote. Go out there and make a difference. Because if you don't vote, whatever we do, you can complain as much as you want. But if you voted, at least you participated in the service. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Are there any council members that would like to comment at this time?
Just say congratulations, Gary.
Thank you.
You've done a very, very good job working hard for us for quite a few years, actually. Thanks.
Good to hear your voice up here rather than out there.
Welcome, but I'm just jealous that I don't get to sit next to you. Joanne gets you.
It's okay.
Like a Frank.
Joanne will hit me when I'm inappropriate.
Well, my comment is that, the thing about Gary that is most outstanding is we know who Gary is. Gary expounds who he is. His philosophy and his political gander is in one direction that certainly isn't hidden. If anything else, we know where he stood, and that's a person I can trust. Okay, so congratulations, Gary.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that. Congratulations. Welcome aboard. With that, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gelzer.
Aye.
All here and present.
Thank you. With that, could you all please rise and join Councilmember Osborne with the invocation and the pledge?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to switch it up a little bit this evening, and let's start with a moment of silence for what our state has endured, the city of Tucson, and some elected and innocent people that have suffered. And so we could take a moment. Thank you. I'd like to actually now go into our invocation, and then we'll have the pledge. Heavenly Father, tragedy has truly hit the people of Arizona. Our public servants and innocents were killed and wounded. We ask for comfort for the loved ones of the lost and the healing of the hurt. And we always continue to pray for the safety over all that serve their fellow man. Let fear not control our lives, but our faith in you be manifested in everything we do. We ask in this new year for great joy, hope, and peace. Let us be blessed, and may we bless one another. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I see there's no expenditures to ratify. Okay, with that, go into the communication section. Up first, is it Nathan?
Mr. Mayor, I will introduce each of these topics.
Okay, go ahead.
The first item will be Nathan Torres and Ryan Lance, and they will make a brief presentation and a memorial to Robert Feller, who was the Cleveland Indians' great pitcher upon his death. And so, Nathan and Ryan.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, we're here tonight. We're joined by Ryan Lance, manager of the Arizona operations for the Cleveland Indians, to pay tribute to Mr. Bob Feller. Mr. Bob Feller was not only a historical figure for the Cleveland Indians, but he also played an important role in Goodyear's young baseball history, attending the many groundbreakings for the various facilities, but most notably throwing out the first pitch on opening day in 2009. Mr. Feller not only was there for those special events, he was also a staple, attending every spring training home game for the Cleveland Indians here in Goodyear, where he signed autographs for thousands. And with that, we will turn things over to Mr. Ryan Lance and have him share some thoughts.
Thanks, Nathan. Thank you, Council, for allowing us to just spend a few minutes here reflecting on the life of Mr. Bob Feller. As Nathan mentioned, Mr. Feller passed away on December 15th at the age of 92 due to complications from leukemia. His death really seems improbable for those of us who've had a chance to be around him, because he has been such an integral part of the Cleveland Indians organization for so long. He put on the Indians uniform at the tender age of 17, and he proudly wore it for the last 75 years. It's a combination of so many other aspects of Mr. Feller's life that made him stand out from other great players. As Midwesterners, fans loved his arm strength that came from working on his farm in Van Meter, Iowa. As Americans, we were all filled with pride with the fact that he enlisted in the Navy on the day after the attack on Pearl Harbor and immediately volunteered for combat service. He was the first Major League Baseball player to do so. Once asked, "What is the most important game you ever won?" he responded, "World War II. Following the war, despite missing 4 seasons during what many considered his prime years, Mr. Feller returned to old form and never once regretted serving his country before himself. His life was much like his fastball. It never seemed to slow down. He remained an ambassador of the game and helped form the Major League Baseball Players Union. He constantly maintained a presence in Greater Cleveland and frequently attended Indians games both in Cleveland as well as Goodyear in our former stay in Winter Haven. As evidenced by the Feller statue outside of Progressive Field, no player has ever meant more to the Indians organization, both during and after his career. Bob was a living legend, but more importantly, a true American patriot. Nothing was more important to Bob than his country and what it stood for. Of all of his accomplishments, he was most proud of the fact that he served his country with honor during World War II. But Bob always reminded us that he was no hero. The heroes were the ones who lost their lives defending their country. Bob was a truly iconic figure who always made you feel like a friend. And with that, we'll cue the video.
Baseball certainly losing one of its greats on Wednesday, and here to talk about him, how Bob they are seeing.
The baseball world is in mourning after the passing of Bob Feller. Before his death, the Iowa native was the longest tenured living Hall of Famer. Born in 1918, Robert William Andrew Feller was a baseball fan at an early age, so much so that his family built a baseball diamond so that Bob could hone his skills. Feller's professional career began in interesting fashion. He was signed for $1 and an autographed baseball by the Cleveland Indians. Feller never saw the minors, being transferred right to the big club, which was a violation of Major League rules. Eventually, Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis ruled Feller could play for the Indians. That was the beginning of one of the greatest careers in the history of the game. Feller spent all 18 Major League seasons he pitched in an Indians uniform. He ended his career with 266 wins and 2,581 strikeouts. He led the American League in strikeouts 7 times. He threw 3 no-hitters. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1962. There are a few career moments that stick out for Feller. In 1938, he set a modern Major League record of 18 strikeouts against the Detroit Tigers. On opening day in 1940, he pitched a no-hitter against the Chicago White Sox. This is the only no-hitter to be thrown on opening day in Major League history. His career was interrupted in 1941. On December 8th, the day after the attacks on Pearl Harbor, he immediately enlisted in the Navy, serving as a gun captain aboard the USS Alabama. He would miss 4 seasons during World War II and was decorated with 5 campaign ribbons and 8 battle stars. He is the only Chief Petty Officer in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Bob Feller was 92 when he passed away. He lived a rich life, both on and off the field, and will always be remembered as one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
Mr. Mayor, the next item that we'd like to present to the City Council is Larry Lang from the Finance Department has several staff people, Victoria Scott and Michelle Gamage, that we would like to acknowledge for great efforts that they've made to save us money. Larry?
Thank you, John. So often when we're visiting, we talk about the large dollar transactions in the city of Goodyear's budget, but I wanted to talk to you tonight about a couple of people, and it's within the finance department, but throughout the city we see the same thing, that are expanding their horizons beyond their job descriptions to find ways of doing business just a little bit better. When compared to the overall city budget, these savings by themselves may seem minor, but the diligent effort by these staff to affect these savings add up, and they help us overall in managing the city and allowing us to do these types of things. So I want to give you a couple of examples of these types of activities. First, I'd ask Victoria Scott to stand if she would. I'm not going to embarrass Victoria by asking her to come up here. Victoria is an accounts payable clerk within the finance department. And an accounts payable clerk, when you think of that and read the job description, their job is to pay the bills in the amount that was authorized and in the quantity that was received that someone else tells you it was received. However, the city's two accounts payable clerks, Victoria and Kathy Painter, her partner, have spent time thoroughly analyzing, researching, and comparing particular portions of the bills. They have found savings on phone bills, damage waivers, and bulk fuel purchases totaling thousands of dollars. I have 6 different items listed out here. I won't go through all 6 of those, but in Victoria's case, those provided a annual savings to the city of $36,000. And just a couple of examples of those, though, because you know I have to give some examples of it. In several equipment rental issues, she noticed that we were paying for a damage waiver. She worked with the risk manager and was able to get a certificate of insurance to the supplier to save that damage waiver. Others didn't know to even check that, and it got caught right there before the bill got paid, and we did save that money. She reviewed some bulk purchases, some fuel purchases and fleet purchases at the ballpark, which ran through a different system than our traditional vendor, and noticed that we were paying federal excise tax on that. She worked with the vendor, sent the certificate, and saved 18 cents per gallon by doing that. She also analyzed our phone bills, and I think you can imagine the phone bill for the city of Goodyear is a little more complex than what some of us might have. And she noticed several things: an excise tax being charged in there. She noticed also that the phone company was charging some lines at $20 and some lines at $30. She did some research and worked with others and got them all switched to to the $20 range, and that one alone saved $1,000 a month. So those are just some examples of what Victoria did going outside the parameters of her job. I'm very proud of her and want to thank you. Tell Victoria she didn't have to stand and endure more embarrassment. Another of our staff is not able to be here tonight. She had to take care of children, but our senior accountant, Michelle Gamage, one of her roles is to take care of our capital assets, to record the fixed assets, as you hear about over the years, to see what property we have and so forth, and make sure it's recorded properly for accounting purposes. Fairly routine and boring task that accountants do. With that, she also noticed that there were some property tax bills coming through, and she took a look and researched them deeper. And while generally we do not pay property tax, and that's something, therefore, we're not very good at processing when we get a property tax. We might get a bill if we took over land that was donated by a developer. It was taxed, we would have to pay it out. But she was also able to notice that some of those were over-assessed in a special district. In one particular case, she was able to reduce our payments annually by $15,000. She also found some property that was misclassified, and in 2010, one particular property that she found worked with the assessor's office, saved us $5,000 in 2010, and another one that she found for 2011, and in future tax years will save us about $12,000 a year. Very proud of the finance department and some of the things that they're doing, and I'd submit to you that these are just some examples of 2 employees with the finance department, but citywide, we see a lot of employees that are going outside their boundaries, and we wanted to take a few minutes just to make sure you were aware of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at this time we'd like Paula Alardo to step forward to review for you. This has been a busy month on industrial activity that's affecting the city of Goodyear, and we will review that for you. And then also, it's an incredible month for retail, and Paula will review that for you. So with that, these are some really good news that we've been involved in the past month. Paula?
Thank you. Mayor and Council, one of the best things I can present to you, I did do an email earlier as a Christmas present, was when we announced that we had finally gotten approval from the Foreign Trade Zone for the West Valley's own Foreign Trade Zone, which is Goodyear and other West Valley cities. As a part of the approval process for the Greater Maricopa Trade Zone, of which Westmark is the grantee, there are 230 acres of land owned by EJM just next door, and 235 acres in Palm Valley 303 up on the 303, which were also approved as general purpose foreign trade zones along with this application. Harry Paxton was instrumental in the original application and getting this whole process through. As a result, he's been made the chairman of the GMFTZ Advisory Council, which is going to administer and market the zone for us. Now, economic development sees these foreign trade zones as an important marketing tool within our city, and Goodyear is at the forefront of the foreign trade zones. Because of the global nature of the economy now, many of the companies that come to us and that we deal with can qualify because they do so much importing can qualify to need custom-free and duty-free for their products. So some of them lately have really wanted to decrease their property tax and their real taxes that they can do with this foreign trade zone. So in several cases, the decrease in their property taxes is the only thing that has allowed us to compete with some California businesses. So that's the really good news. That was your Christmas present this year. It was Suntech last year, right? I want to cover industrial activity first because it's been a really active quarter. In the past couple months, a company called Prime Solutions Group, which was originally a home-based business in Goodyear and specializes in systems engineering work, primarily in aerospace and the defense industry. They came to us, they met with us, they wanted to get out of the home. We directed them to some property on the airport. They are now on the airport, and because they're aerospace related, they can take advantage of the military reuse zone, which they've already done. When they hire people, they can get a $7,500 income tax credit. In construction, TIs that they do, it was tax-free to them. And they also get a 75% reduction in their property taxes as a result of the MRZ. This company is working on a lot of proposals for defense industry and military contracts, and expect to hire about 10 engineers by spring of 2011. So we're really proud of this home-based company that is now really in a facility and hiring. Speaking of the airport, we also were one of the 3 finalists in December for a company that transports parts for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and the F-35. The type of pallets that they make in order to transport fuselages and wings and things like that are sometimes more technical than what goes into the plane. They were interested in Hangar 18 on our airport, which is 100,000 square feet of 40-year-old Navy hangar, which we really have always been looking for a tenant for. We came close, but then in the end they found out they needed a 9,300 square foot runway, and we only had 85. The good news is that Mesa Gateway is also a finalist, along with an airport in Arkansas. They have the right length runways, so we hope it ends up at Mesa Gateway. If we couldn't get them, then Mesa can. We've also had 2 other companies that are aerospace and aviation related that want to take advantage of the MRZ, and we've been working with them at the airport as well. There's another major manufacturing company with international operations that is currently negotiating for the remaining space in the old former Rubbermaid building. We feel this company is very close to coming to Goodyear. They would employ up to 250 employees with their eye on expansion in the future. They also would be building about 4,000 square feet of new office space on the former Rubbermaid building. There's a publicly traded national company out of Chicago that's considering 250,000 square feet in the Sun Life building, which is on Litchfield Road, south. It's basically on MC 85 off Litchfield Road, just south of MC 85. We've gotten a lot of people looking at this building. It's basically our last building, but we keep competing with Tolleson and Phoenix, and we haven't landed anybody yet for this building. This would be basic distribution with 75 employees. We're one of 7 buildings that they're looking at in the Southwest Valley, but they have decided on the Southwest Valley for sure. The Sun Life building is also being considered by a green manufacturer that recycles all kinds of trash and builds in non-flammable building materials for the building material industry. And they're looking at the entire 418,000 square feet of the Sun Life building. There's a California food manufacturer that has said they want to relocate to Goodyear, and they're considering build-to-suit as well as looking at buildings that we already have 40,000 to 100,000 square feet. And they're planning a visit in January. As many of you may know, on the front page of the Business Journal, it was announced that Macy's has closed on a 12-acre parcel next to their current fulfillment center. It's big enough for a 200,000 square foot expansion. We talked to Macy's. What they said in the Business Journal wasn't quite right. They do not plan to do that this year. They do plan it in the future, but not necessarily this year. But they did confirm that they had closed on the land. Also, Macy's, as you know, is installing the country's largest commercial rooftop solar system, and they have just completed a $10 million internal expansion of their lines. Next to basically Macy's, National Oil Well Varco has closed on 6.5 acres. And this is going to be a data storage center, about 2 stories. It won't employ a lot of people, about 10, but it would be about a $40 million investment because it's all computers inside. And Sub-Zero is in the first phase of their design and tenant improvements. They originally told us that they were coming in late 2011. They've now moved that up to June or July of 2011, and we already know that their employees are looking for houses in the Goodyear market. So that's good news. Now on the retail front, we've had very good news from Vestar about the Palm Valley Pavilions. That's where the Best Buy is on Litchfield Road. Beginning of 2010, the vacancy rate here was 28%. All the leases that they have going right now are completed. They will have only 5,600 square feet remaining in this entire center, which goes all the way up to McDowell. The biggest news, and first one, is the company's coming in to replace linens and things. It's Total Wine and More, America's wine superstore. A lot of sales tax there. So they will occupy about 30,000 square feet, and initially they will only build out about 20,000. Tenant improvements are going to take about 20 weeks. They want to open by July 4th. It's a very important date for them. Their owners are out east. They expect to be here, so we'll have to work closely with them to make sure that they hit their time frame. So that's really big news. When we talked to him about the Total Wines and More, the realtor told us that there's a lot of other future tenants. Pink Royalty, which is an entertainment party store for moms and children, is going to recently occupied 4,500 square feet. Party Planet has signed a lease for 8,000. The Fazoli's is now going to become Freddy's frozen custard and hamburgers. They should be open in about 60 days. Massage Envy is adding a spa component, and they're expanding by 1,300 square feet. And there's a new company coming in that we're one of the first in the valley called Naked Pizza. It's the first corporate store where Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, is part owner. They expect to have in 3 to 5 years about 50 stores in the valley. This is going in the space between Wildflower and Subway. And in talking to this broker, he gave us really good news, that the Famous Footwear is the #1 location. Goodyear is the #1 location of all the Famous Footwears in the valley. And Ross Dress for Less, it's the #2 location in the entire valley. And Best Buy and Barnes & Noble are also some of their better stores. So this is all really good news for us. The last thing I want to tell you about is the Small Business Breakfast Series. We're starting again for 2011. The next one is Tuesday, February 22nd. We're doing it on social media 2.0 because the first one we did was such a hit, and people need to understand it and learn more about social media. So that will be on Tuesday, February 22nd. So there's been a lot of stuff happening.
It's good news.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. That's very good news. I know that the excitement when we heard about the Total Wine was... Oh, no. I mean, I don't even drink, so... But that excitement, that is going to pull so many people into that shopping center to shop. And I'm not making any statement against BevMo, but this is going to be an incredible boost for the city in the sales tax field, and establish ourselves as the premier place in the Southwest Valley for commercial business. So this is great. At this time, I'd like Dean Kogenhauer to come up and talk about an update on our Goodyear Wellness Clinic and discuss controlling the cost of health care. This is a very informative presentation. It will take a few minutes longer than usual, but Dean, I give it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and distinguished council members. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you this evening to talk to you briefly about the Goodyear Wellness Clinic and some of the strategies that we've employed over the course of the last several years when it comes to controlling the cost of health care. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the risk management pie. The risk management pie consists of about $7.6 million. And we take a look at that pie, and that top section includes our workers' compensation coverage. It includes our 320 vehicles that we insure, our $13 million umbrella coverage, our property coverage, our inland marine, our crime coverage. It includes also all other types of benefits that we have, such as the dental, the life, trip insurance, commuter insurance, short-term disability is all included in that top portion of the pie. And yet the bottom portion, over $5 million, is health care and health care alone. We implement a lot of tools in that top portion from a risk management perspective in controlling the costs that are associated with that. So now we're starting to put some of those same risk management techniques in place for controlling the major portion, the $5 million. Historically, controlling the costs of health care consists of a wellness program. Certainly there's a near-term strategy and a long-term strategy that we put in place. In the past, it's always been a case of, well, it's a traditional plan. It consists of co-pays and deductibles, and what can we do? Every year we take a look at what the co-pays are and we increase them. Or we take a look at what the deductible is and we increase that. Or we take a look at the percentages paid by employees and we say, well, we should just go ahead and push another 5% or another 10% down to the employee base. Over the course of the last 9 years, overall, those co-pays and deductibles that we see have gone up about 100% on average. Generic drugs is the only one that's remained relatively the same. But when we take a look at in- and outpatient co-pays, those deductibles have gone up a total of 500%. When we take a look then at how we compare what has the city paid out over the course of the last 9 to 10 years, that's gone up about 200%. The portion that the employees has paid or is paying today has gone up nearly 400%. Then we have to ask, well, how do we compare with our benchmark cities? Certainly there's been a lot of changes over the course of the last 8, 9, 10 years in terms of cost shifting, but how do we compare? And on average, we compare pretty much the same with all of our benchmark cities, with the exception of inpatient deductibles. The city of Goodyear is at a $500 deductible, with the average being slightly over $200. So how did that work for us? Well, last year, just a year ago, we were looking at a 115% loss ratio. Essentially, the ability for us to control the net cost of health care had failed. So what were some of the things that we had done, and what were some of the things that we could do? If we could do just two things and two things only, we could avoid the budgetary time bomb of increasing health care premiums. If we can keep the healthy healthy and keep the chronically ill from getting worse, we can control the costs of health care. That's all we have to do. Okay, what drives the net cost of health care? Well, when we take a look at that, and that is, this data comes from the City of Goodyear's last 12-month period. Our clinic, our health and wellness clinic, costs us about $62 a visit. Where we go all the way up to an emergency room visit is $893. So if we can keep people away from the urgent care, the specialists, and the emergency room, obviously we're going to save money if we can treat them early enough before they get to that point. But more importantly, when we take a look at this slide and we take a look at an inpatient event, for us, averages over $19,000 for every inpatient event. If we can keep those employees, spouses, and dependents from going to the inpatient level or outpatient services, we're money ahead. So we've put together a comprehensive wellness strategy over a period of time. We started off fairly slow. We started out with a weight loss challenge program, a walking program where we have employees wearing pedometers like this one that track the steps. That's really not effective when it comes to controlling health care. But what it does do is starts to create the culture of health. It starts to plant the seed that, yes, I can be proactive in taking care of my own health. We put together the flu shots that we do for the employees on an annual basis, and then we started to bring in some programs that really started to make a difference. The Mammogram Ban. We found 2 employees with breast cancer that didn't know they had it. Now we started to make an impact. We brought in Health Waves. Health Waves does a full blood draw. We do an on-site health questionnaire. Now we're starting to find things such as folks that are diabetic that didn't know they were diabetic. The cost of treating just one individual for diabetes long-term is catastrophic in terms of the effect on our health care plan. If we can take that one person and pull them back from the edge because we got to them early enough, we're money ahead. Then we put in because there are some folks in our city that don't like to have a full blood draw, we brought in nurses that would actually do the blood draw from the fingertip and do health questionnaires to that extent. Well, what we saw is that early detection and prevention was absolutely critical, and we knew that that was critical to our success. So we had a really good cheerleader out there saying, hey, come on and let's get involved in these wellness initiatives. And only 25% of our employees participated. And unfortunately, the 25% that participated are the 25% that understand wellness, that are the folks that are proactive in taking care of their health. So we were missing 75%. So we said, okay, well, how about we do this? Everybody in the city pays 10% more of the total annual premium per year. It's going to cost you an additional $500 to $1,500 per year unless you participate in one of the 3 early diagnostic, either the Mammogram Ban, Healthways full blood draw, or with Cigna having that finger prick with the nurses and that on-site coaching one-on-one. Participation today is at 99%. Amazing how that worked. When we take a look at our benchmark cities and we have talked to them, the closest to us has a 45% participation rate in wellness, and we're at 99. So it all goes back to money. It's always about the money. So we look at the clinic. The clinic, again, costs us $60. If we can start catching those events, this is not about trading dollar for dollar. This is not about taking a doctor's office visit instead of having it there, having it at the clinic. This is not about having the emergency room visit and instead of that being treated at the clinic. That's not what this is about. It's part of it, but not in whole. So in the past, we looked at traditional plan designs with the co-pays and deductibles, and then the potential for higher deductibles, and then eventually to move towards a consumer-driven plans. So last year, we said, well, let's do this. Let's add a HMO plan that has cost containment elements inside of it, so that there are gatekeepers, so that these doctors are actually employed by Cigna, which assists in driving the costs down. And then let's put in what a lot of folks think of as a consumer-driven plan with a high deductible. In a consumer-driven plan, there are no co-pays. You must satisfy the entire deductible before the plan pays anything. And so the intent was to make the employees understand what the true cost of health care is. So an employee goes to the doctor today and you ask them, how much was that doctor visit? Well, that was $20. No, that doctor visit on average was $130 or $110. So now the employee feels every one of those dollars. So we held educational classes. We did them on the weekends. We did them in the evening. We did those classes wherever we could reach the most employees. We did 27 of them. We thought we would get about 5% into the high deductible plan. That's pretty much the industry norm. We thought we'd get about 10% into the staff model plan. That's not what happened. 37% of our employees today are in the high deductible plan. They have a $1,200 deductible. They have no copays. If that medicine, in fact, costs $220, they pay $220. The HMO plan, instead of 10%, we went to 34%. The traditional plan that just the year preceding was 96% of our employees were on, only 28% remained. So we take a look at this chart that compares us to the benchmark cities, and traditionally we think of comparing ourselves to other entities, and we really have to start to take this out of the equation. There's only one other municipality inside of our benchmark cities that offers a consumer-driven high deductible plan. They have less than 10% participation. So it's getting more and more difficult for us to compare ourselves with other cities. Some of the other tools we've put in that cost containment toolbox is we realize that for the most part, our coverage is relatively economical for employee only. So we said, okay, that's costing about $5,000 a year to have that plan. What if we offer the employee $150 a month not to take our coverage, providing they show proof of coverage elsewhere? We thought that that would save $50,000 or $60,000. Today it's saving $165,000 a year. The HMO dental program, which is basically a discount program, but we offered it free to the employee base. It saves us $72,000 a year. That's on today's numbers. Then last year, we put in a high deductible plan, but we also put in behind the scenes what's called a sweep account. It's just a unique tool where the employees feel like they have a $500 deductible when in fact it's $1,250. By doing that, we will net this year somewhere in the neighborhood of a $250,000 savings. Keep the healthy healthy, keep the chronically ill from getting worse. Avoid the budget time bomb. Easy. We just have to do those two things. Long-term strategy, we're going to gravitate away from the PPO. We're going to continue to maintain that PPO product. It's still going to be available to the employees, but there's going to be additional cost shifting that I see going to that. So if the employee wants to be on a plan that does not have built-in cost containment strategies inside of it, they're going to pay more to be on the plan. Consumer-driven plan, we have one today that's $1,200. I see coinsurance being sprinkled into that this year, and a second high-deductible consumer-driven plan of $2,500 being added. The advantage to the employee, we take a major portion of the savings when we move into the consumer-driven plans and give it back to the employee in the form of a health savings account. The reason for this is we're not so much interested in today's dollars as we are in what about next year's dollars and the next year. Let's flatline that 9% increase that we see on average on an annual basis, and let's make that a 1% or a 3% increase on an annualized basis. So how does the wellness complement the healthcare cost containment strategies? We put in the Goodyear Health and Wellness Clinic. We put that in 2 years ago. It was focused and is today primarily on early detection. So if you go into our health and wellness clinic and your fudda is not feeling good and you want to get it fixed, we're going to do that for you. That's absolutely not a problem. But when you go see your primary care treating physician, how much time do you spend with your physician in the exam room, face-to-face, discussing your issue? Is it 4 minutes? 6? I'd venture to say it's not more than 10. The average is actually between 5 and 6 minutes. At the Goodyear Wellness Clinic, your first visit, you'll be face-to-face for anywhere from 18 to 22 minutes. That's going to be the average. Now, we're certainly going to take care of why you came in today, but that's not why we're interested in seeing you. We're interested in finding what's the next major claim in your life. When's the last time you had your blood sugar checked? Let's talk a little bit about your blood pressure. When was the last time you had a colonoscopy done? Those are the things that we're looking for through the clinic. And then we made it free to the employee, the spouse, and the dependents, and made it easy for them. So now we have this cost containment vehicle that has a high deductible that we're saving money on, but we still have the ability for the employees to be seen on the day-to-day. We never want them to not continue to be seen because early detection is absolutely key. Clinic opened in 08. We had 15 to 20 patients a week. Employees were a little apprehensive. Well, if I go to the clinic, then the city's going to know everything about everything. Today, we're on track to see over 3,200 patients this year. In addition to that, we're now treating a majority of our workers' compensation claims there, our CDL exams, police fit testing, firefighter blood work is all now being run through the clinic, our flu shots all being done there that we had been paying for out of other budgets. So what have we found? Exactly what you think we would find. We have found people that knew they were diabetic but were totally non-compliant with their medication. But we were able to work with them because of the staff that we have hand-chosen to run that clinic to where they are now compliant. We have found folks with other cancers, close to coronary events, high cholesterol, all of those elements that we know long-term are going to cost us money. It's all about early detection and prevention. So the clinic today costs us a little under $200,000 net. And that's, again, the work comp comes out of that, CDL exams come out of that. But that's what it costs us net. Conservatively, and by that I mean we anticipate 35% of the folks that go to the clinic would have never seen a doctor. Okay, so let's do that conservatively. We also assume that none of those visits would have prevented a hospital overnight event. That's probably a little too conservative. And with that, we'll save $350,000, a net of $150,000 not hitting our plan that we're saving. In addition to that, we've had now the word starting to get out. Peoria's been down, Surprise has been down, Chandler has talked to us, and there are other municipalities that we've also had a visit with, and my understanding is Peoria is actually going forward with their model. So how's it working? The loss ratio today is 81%, 81.6. We assume that that's going to track up a little bit because we know we have a couple of large claims waiting in the wings, but it's still going to be a substantial improvement of where we were just a year ago. So controlling the costs of health care. The insurance committee meets about 12 times a year, and we take very seriously the role that we have in balancing the interests of the employee and the interest of the city. How do we control the costs and be fair to everyone involved? So again, this year I think we're going to see additional cost shifting into the PPO plan for the employee, the addition of new plans, and going back to taking a look at that high deductible plan for additional cost-saving opportunities. It's clearly the early detection and the thinking outside of the box, being on the leading edge of not only the governmental sector, but the private sector, and not following. Keep the healthy healthy, keep the chronically ill from getting worse. Just those two things, and we'll avoid that budgetary time bomb. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes the presentations that we have this evening. Thank you very much. I thought they were all interesting and worth your while, so thank you.
I agree. Thank you very much. At this time, we have the citizens' comments. Time for the citizens to comment on any non-agenda items. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Before you speak, identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address. Do we have any cards?
Yes. Roger Matlin has requested, oh, no, I'm sorry, these are for the consent agenda.
For the consent, okay. Anyone present, non-agenda item? Okay, with that, City Clerk, we got what next, the consent? Could you proceed to, please read the consent agenda?
Item A, approve draft minutes from the special meeting, work session, and regular meeting held on December 6, 2010, and the special meeting and regular meeting held on December 13, 2010. Item B, adopt ordinance number 11-1230, amending Chapter 3, Percent for Art Program, Section 3-9-3A of the Goodyear City Code, adding 2 voting members to serve on the Goodyear Arts and Culture Commission. Item C, appoint 6 commission members to serve on the Arts and Culture Commission for 3-year terms, and 1 alternate to serve on the Arts and Culture Commission for 1 4-year term. The following citizens have been contacted and have agreed to serve on the commission. Terms expiring on December 31st, 2013, Ed Bonvecchio, Norman Criddle Sr., Norma Cunningham, Bonnie Lewis, Linda Strauss-Lewis, and Jennifer Urbazuski, Grono. Then for the term expiring on December 31st, 2014, Melissa Kellett as alternate. Item D, appoint Karen Keith to the Planning and Zoning Commission to fill the term vacated by Gary Gelzer, which expires on January 31st, 2012, or until her successor is appointed and qualified. Item E, ratify the termination of the professional services contract and purchase order not to exceed $864,055 with Durant for the master plan of the Goodyear Operations Center site and design of Phase 1 facilities.
Is there anybody, do you have any cards for anybody from the public?
Yes, I do. Roger Matlin filled out a card for item 7A, 7D, and 7E.
Come on up, Roger.
Charging for campaigning.
Good evening. The microphone on?
I don't know, is it on?
Tap it.
I think it is on, Roger.
It's on.
Okay. All right, Roger Matlin, Goodyear, Arizona. Good evening, Council. Happy New Year. Items I want to discuss were consent items A.
Roger, move the microphone up so you wait, please. Can't hear you.
Okay. Items A, D, and E on the consent. So do you want to pull those, or do you just want my comments?
Yeah, go ahead and start with A and let us know what your issues are.
Item A has to do with the approval of minutes, and this is getting back to an item that came up once before that I brought up regarding the minutes of a prior meeting. The issue was brought up again on December 6, 2010, during the regular council meeting regarding a request I had made for information having to do with landscaping and some programs here in the city. Unfortunately, you got the minutes incorrect again. And when I went back and went through the documentation, I'm kind of disappointed because the city has this failure to document things correctly, not only information that may or may not be critical to the city, but some information that is very critical to the city, and I think you should make a habit of properly documenting what people say when they get up here and speak. In this particular item, it had to do with the fact that the information that I'd requested from City Manager Fishbach was actually presented to the council during a work session on November 8th, 2010, not during the council meeting on November 8th, 2010. And that's why the information was not brought to my attention, because I did in fact attend the council meeting. I wasn't at the work session, and it wasn't presented then. In the minutes, it is noted that the information was brought up during the council meeting, not the work session. And I think it's critical that you make sure you document those things correctly, because a little problem can have a big influence on the city of Goodyear, obviously in contractual agreements.
What are you specifically asking for, Raj?
Well, I will say I thank the city manager, Fishbach. He provided the documentation. It had to do with, I just want the record to note correctly that it was, the information that was provided during a work session, not a council meeting.
I think that's fine, Roger.
So it's just getting the record straight.
No problem.
The city should make that as a habit. So
I'm getting that is going to be done. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But he did provide the documentation, and I appreciate that very much.
Sure, Roger.
The next item had to do with, again, having to do with minutes. I had asked a question regarding the Durant contract, and one of the questions had to do with the $2,000, what I considered overfunding, having to do with that contract. None of that was noted in the minutes, and I thought that was an item that was not only misleading in the contract and a terrible oversight by the council and the city management, but was in fact just a fraudulent item that shouldn't have been included in that contract. So I just like that my comments be noted on the record properly. There's an answer to the $200,000 question, but there is no notation of the question that was asked about it.
We'll ask to look into that specific.
So, and again, this just gets back to the city, I believe, should document everyone's comments very clearly and properly. You represent the taxpayers, you represent the citizens, and so I would hope that you would represent their comments up here as well properly.
Sure thing, Roger. What else?
Okay, the next item is for consent item number D, having to do with the appointment to fill a vacant position on planning and zoning. I didn't see any information on the person that is being recommended, Karen Keith, and I just wanted to know what her qualifications are, education, background, experience with planning and zoning, and unfortunately our city has made many mistakes in the past with the baseball stadium and annexation, and I want to make sure that you're approving someone that knows what they're doing for the future.
Well, I'll tell you what, hold it right there, Roger, for a second. Does somebody want to answer his question specifically on the background? How do you want to do that, Harvey or Harvey?
Harvey.
Yeah, come on up, Harvey.
Vice Mayor, members of the council, Karen Keith was an employee of the city of Goodyear for, I believe, more than 5 years in the community development department. She has, we hired her, in fact, as an intern. I hired her as an intern from ASU from the planning program at ASU. So she has a degree in planning and over 5 years experience, and then she went on to a law firm and did entitlement work for a law firm. So she has a considerable amount of experience in planning and zoning and is familiar with the city of Goodyear, as a resident of the city of Goodyear for a number of years, and very qualified to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think most of you are very familiar with her and know her.
Thank you, Harvey. Does that answer your question, Roger?
Yes, generally speaking. I would just ask that that be presented when it comes up on the council agenda, that information be there so the public knows who is being presented. And then I will ask, assuming you approve Karen, that she just does a better job than we have historically done here in the city, and represent the taxpayers properly.
What's the next question, Roger?
And then finally, item number E, which kind of relates back to item A. I'm glad to see that for once the council listened to one of my recommendations and is canceling this contract, being that it had some misleading statements and items that were misexpenditures of taxpayer money. I'm glad to see that you are canceling the contract, and I would just ask that in the future you be much more careful in addressing these kind of items, and in putting the contracts together, you do it properly and represent the taxpayers that you are up there to represent. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Mr. Pizzello, I would consider that something that is not accurate, and I would like our attorney to specifically address this situation, because he is quite frankly accusing us of quite frankly being fraudulent in our contracts, and I believe that this needs to be addressed.
Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, or Vice Mayor, members of the council, the situation is a little different than Mr. Matlin represents it to be. There was as you know, when you're procuring professional services such as this, you go through a Title 34 procurement process, which is qualifications based. So it's not a hard bid. You're not awarding a contract based upon the amount of the contract, but based upon the qualifications of the professionals who will be staffing the team that you'll be contracting with. What arose in this case was after we'd entered the contracts or gone through the evaluation process with Durant, and after council had awarded the contract, when our team started meeting with Durant, it appeared, and actually what happened was Durant went through a reorganization, and the main person that the city based its recommendation to enter this contract with was no longer going to be with Durant and working on this project. So that caused a lot of concerns for city staff, because much of the award of the contract was based upon the qualifications of this individual. So based upon that change in circumstances with Durant, the city exercised a clause in the contract which allowed us to terminate the contract in this case and move on to another qualified firm, which we'll be coming back to the council with shortly. But based upon a change of personnel with Durant that the council was not aware of at the time they awarded this contract, after going through a valid procurement process under Arizona statute. Does that answer the questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Osborne. Is that it?
Thank you very much, council, and thank you, Attorney Massey.
Thank you, Roger.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
if I could just comment, if Mr. Matlin reads the COAC on the Plan Commission appointment, that information is covered in the COAC.
Thank you. With that, is there anything on the agenda that city council members would like to pull? Questions?
Yes.
Yes? Would you?
Well, I just have some comments on the same one that Mr. Matlin brought before us on D. As you know, I had quite a few questions on that item when it came up, but I did vote for it. I would just ask the city to be more cautious in the future. When they hire a consultant, make sure that they're not hiring it based on one person. So we should be working with more than just one person from a particular company so that they're, in a case like that, if a person is terminated or is no longer with the company, that we still have a handle on this. There's a lot of staff time that went wasted because of this, and nothing can be done about it, but we were basing it all on one person's ability to take us through this, and that person no longer is with that company. So if there were more than one person, if two or more from that company, in case something like this happened in the future. Anyway, it's just a cautionary statement.
Dr. Cavalier, just one comment on that. This particular person was the project manager. So, I mean, we weren't basing the contract on a person down in the organization. This was the key leader of the project that we had discussed with it. He had come to us and spent 2 days with us in meetings after the contract was awarded. Mm-hmm. And only then, at that time, did he say, by the way, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Well, we need to be more cautious with that in the future. I'm just saying it because there is staff time that was wasted on this. Tremendous. And we don't want that to happen again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Cavalier. With that being said, do we have a motion to adopt the
So moved.
consent?
Second.
So we've got the first was Councilmember Osborne, second. Councilmember Sousa, roll call vote.
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gelzer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Now we come to the business agenda, designating an acting vice mayor. I've got on here a presentation. Is the city attorney going to?
Would you like a short presentation?
Yeah, please do.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, this is more of a housekeeping matter. In the normal course of business, when we have the office of mayor filled, we obviously have a designated vice mayor who serves at such times as the mayor is out of town or otherwise incapacitated. With the office of the mayor being currently vacant, the vice mayor, of course, has moved up to fill that role, but we really haven't provided for the fact, well, what if Vice Mayor Pizzillo has to leave town on business or vacation? Who's going to be in that acting role during such absence? So as a housekeeping matter, it behooved us to put on the agenda that we probably need to appoint an acting mayor, which is what the charter calls the, I guess, the third in line during the such time until we have the office of mayor filled. So it'd just be up to the council tonight to consider who they want to appoint in that acting role until such time as the office of mayor is filled through the election process. With that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Do we have any
Questions for that?
comments from the public?
No.
With that, can I guess, entertain a motion?
Mr. Vice Mayor, can I just make a statement about
Sure.
this?
Go ahead.
In the past, years ago, I don't know, maybe we've changed the charter since then. We never bothered with going down the line, this one, then the next one. It was always by experience. The person that had been on the council the longest, who wasn't the vice mayor, if the mayor was absent and the vice mayor was absent, it was the next person in line. Is that changed, or is that still in the?
Historically, what's happened is we've kind of known in advance when someone might be gone, or it's been unusual when you had the mayor and the vice mayor both out of town at the same time. When that occasion has arisen, we've usually come to council ahead of time and said we need to appoint an acting mayor for this 2-week period. It's kind of important to have a person in charge because if Vice Mayor Pizzillo were out of town and we were to have an emergency situation that you need an emergency proclamation, you're not going to have somebody legally entitled to sign that. So as a housekeeping matter, it would be a good idea to appoint an acting mayor.
What you're saying, I think, is that it's cleaner.
Yes.
Because in the past, what we've done is they've just simply called the next person in line, who in this case would be Councilman Sousa, as the next person in line to, by experience. And if he wasn't available, go down to the next one. And if he was, I mean, it was, why this is getting into a lot of.
Well, little different, though. We've always had the office of mayor filled, and we always had a vice mayor appointed, and that typically was by seniority. So you always had those two legal positions filled. Then only in the event that those two persons were out of town did we ever move to the acting mayor position, which is rare, I grant it.
But it has happened.
It has happened. And we have come to council and appointed an acting mayor for a certain limited amount of time when the mayor and the vice mayor were both out of town. But in this case, we don't have a vice mayor, so if Vice Mayor Pizzillo were out of town...
Whatever.
Yeah.
It just seems like we're taking a lot of time on something that seems very trivial, where it could be fixed by just the next person in line steps in, that's all.
Councilmember Gelser.
As the junior council member, I don't think I'm qualified to serve as acting mayor during any brief period of time. So I would like to take this time to nominate Councilman Souza, who is our most experienced councilman, to serve as acting mayor during any times that our vice mayor may be out.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We got a motion from Councilmember Gelser first, and a second from Councilmember Loretano. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4? Was it 5-1? Okay. Next up, we have B, mending of the zoning ordinance regulating land uses related to medical marijuana. Who's going to do the presentation? Oh, you got the straw. Okay.
The short straw. Mr. Vice Mayor, council members, this is the proposed ordinance to implement land use regulations pertaining to medical marijuana. So I have a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to go through and kind of give you a briefing and then take you to the recommendation for adoption. As you know, Proposition 203 was approved by the voters in November, and it authorized the use, sale, cultivation of medical marijuana in the state of Arizona. And pursuant to the act, cities are authorized to enact reasonable zoning regulations. So that is the reason we have a proposed ordinance before you tonight to amend the zoning regulations. Under the act, medical marijuana may be possessed or cultivated only by a registered qualifying patient, a registered designated caregiver, or a registered nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary agent. It allows establishment of nonprofit medical marijuana dispensaries, and a dispensary may acquire, possess, cultivate, manufacture, deliver, transfer, transport, supply, sell, or dispense marijuana and related supplies and educational materials. They also may cultivate marijuana on site or at a designated off-site location. All cultivation must be in an enclosed locked facility that is at least 500 feet from any existing public or private school pursuant to the act. The act also contains restrictions that consumption of marijuana on the site of the dispensary is prohibited. It must have only one secure entrance to the dispensary. The principal officers of the dispensary must be over 21 and never been convicted of an excluded felony offense or been on the board of a dispensary that had its certificate revoked. And by state law, a dispensary may not sell more than 2.5 ounces of marijuana to a registered qualifying patient or registered designated caregiver in any 2-week period. After the act was approved by the voters, the Department of Health Services has 120 days to enact rules governing dispensaries and issuance of registration cards to qualifying patients. That 120-day time frame started from the time the governor certified that the act was duly authorized and will require that the regulations be in effect by April 10th. Draft rules were issued by the department on December 17th, and the deadline for comments was January 7th. The department indicated they had gotten something like 1,300 comments, and they're going through them now and trying to evaluate them with respect to what the draft rules were.
The number of dispensary registration certificates that can be issued in the state is limited to 1 for every 10 registered pharmacies in the state, and that's estimated to be approximately 125 potential dispensary licenses based on the number of pharmacies in the state. So to implement the local regulations related to this, we are proposing to add new definitions for medical marijuana designated caregiver cultivation, medical marijuana qualifying patient cultivation, medical marijuana dispensary, and medical marijuana off-site cultivation location. Starting off with the registered qualifying patient, that's a person who has been diagnosed by a physician as having a debilitating medical condition. A debilitating medical condition is defined in the Act as cancer, glaucoma, AIDS, hepatitis C, ALS, Crohn's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and there's some others listed that have debilitating symptoms. A registered qualifying patient may cultivate up to 12 marijuana plants at his or her primary residence if the residence is more than 25 miles from a licensed or registered dispensary. A registered designated caregiver may cultivate up to 60 plants for the other registered qualifying patients based on that caregiver providing assistance to up to 5 qualifying patients. Our proposed ordinance would limit this activity to locations that are also more than 25 miles from a registered dispensary. That is something the Act does not specifically address. In terms of the proposed locations for dispensaries and off-site cultivation, we have proposed that a medical marijuana dispensary could be established by right in a C2 general commercial district, an I1 light industrial district, or an I2 general commercial district, subject to certain separation and development standards, which I'll touch on as we go through the presentation. A medical marijuana off-site cultivation location would be allowed only in the I1 or I2 districts, and again, also subject to certain separation and development standards. These uses would not be allowed in existing PAD districts that do not have an underlying C2, I1, or I2 district specifically listed in the PAD. So if a property is zoned PAD, to establish a medical marijuana dispensary, there would actually have to be a rezoning involved to adjust the PAD. The separation requirements recommended are for medical marijuana dispensaries or off-site cultivation locations that they be 2,000 feet apart from one another. This is intended to avoid an overconcentration of a number of facilities in the same location. It is recommended that it be 500 feet from a residential zoning district, 1,000 feet from a public or private school, preschool, daycare, or child care center, public park, library, or community center, church or place of worship, or a licensed residential substance abuse treatment facility. In addition, the dispensaries must be located in a permanent building and not located in a trailer or cargo container or some other modular or motor vehicle. The maximum gross floor area of the dispensary is not to exceed 2,500 square feet. And the secure storage area for the medical marijuana stored at the dispensary shall not exceed 500 square feet of the total 2,500 square feet maximum gross floor area of the dispensary. The local rules also require that the interior customer waiting area be equal to 25% of the gross floor area. The permitted hours of operation of a medical marijuana dispensary be limited to between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. And these hours are highlighted in red because the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended this change. We originally had 9 to 5. The Commission felt that hours beyond 9 to 5 were important for people who couldn't get there during regular business hours. A dispensary shall not have a drive-through service, shall not offer service that provides off-site delivery of medical marijuana, and should not provide for outdoor seating areas. With respect to the off-site cultivation, it similarly must be in a permanent building and not in any kind of portable vehicle. The maximum gross floor area shall not exceed 4,000 square feet. Originally, it was recommended that it be also limited to 2,500 square feet, but based on testimony that we received at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing and other information that we have subsequently researched from other cities, increasing that to 4,000 square feet was determined to be appropriate. The secure storage area within the 4,000 square feet should not exceed 1,000 square feet of the total. To help the council get a feel for where commercial and industrial districts are located, this map gives you a feel for where the commercial is in the red and the industrial is in the light and dark purple. This is existing zoning. Based on the existing zoning, there's over 1,300 acres of C2, 1,500 acres of I1, and 833 acres of I2 within the city that potentially could be sites for these types of uses. It's important that we are able to demonstrate that the opportunity is there so that the proposed ordinance would not be construed as being drafted in a way to be exclusionary. This map attempts to give you a feel for where potential sites could be located based on the separation requirements. And based on the separation requirements, there's an estimated 9 potential sites in existing buildings and 37 potential sites based on existing zoning and proposed separation standards. That is not to say that we would get that many locations. It only goes to prove that the proposed ordinance as drafted it would not be exclusionary.
Can
Yes,
we
sir.
limit the number of locations within the city of Goodyear? You're saying 9, okay, can we limit to one location or not?
Vice Mayor Pizzola, Councilman Sousa, generally speaking, that is not authorized under, or is generally not allowed under zoning regulations to actually limit the number of facilities. We can impose reasonable restrictions, such as the separation requirements that are based on protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. But putting an actual number in place, I'm not sure that would be supported in law.
Thank you.
At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the commission conducted a public hearing on December 17th. There were a couple of people who attended and commented. As I noted, one was about the hours of operation. The second one was about the maximum size of an off-site cultivation facility. And both of the changes that were recommended have been incorporated into the proposed ordinance that's before you tonight. The ordinance also contains an emergency clause so that it be in effect immediately upon adoption. It's become to our attention that as the rules are being developed for this and the lack of having provisions in the zoning ordinance to provide adequate protections, it's important that we get this in place because there's already interest out there in looking at sites and securing locations. And so the earlier we get our rules on the books, the better it would be to ensure that we protect the citizens and the public health, safety, and welfare. That concludes the presentation, and I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
First, are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, can I get the city clerk to read ordinance?
Adopt ordinance 11-1231, amending Article 2, definitions, Article 3, zoning districts, and Article 4, special uses, uses requiring additional evaluation, non-conforming uses, and buildings, of the zoning ordinance of the City of Goodyear, Arizona, adopted May 24, 1999, as amended to add definitions for medical marijuana designated caregiver cultivation, medical marijuana dispensary, medical marijuana off-site cultivation location, and medical marijuana qualifying patient cultivation location to allow medical marijuana uses authorized by the passage of Proposition 203 as principal permitted uses in the C2 General Commercial District, I1 Light Industrial Park District, and I2 General Industrial Park District, subject to certain specific standards, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilmember Gelser and a second from Councilmember Osborne. Now it's up for discussion. Where do you want to start? We'll start over here on the right. We'll work it this way.
Okay.
Councilmember Loretano.
Okay, I have a question for you. I was trying to pick out exactly what neighborhoods these were, and since without some of the street names, it was hard for me to pick them all out. But there was one, and I think we'd like to confirm some of these, because if I found one that I think kind of is right by a daycare. This one up in Estrella Mountain Ranch. I assume that's the only commercial, since we have no commercial up there. That's got to be the Safeway there on that corner, and there's a daycare center there. I mean, in that shopping center.
Vice Mayor Pasillo, Councilor Loretano, I cannot attest to 100% accuracy of the map. We did the best we could in terms of locating facilities and then doing the best estimate in terms of the separation requirements. There's a lot of separation requirements in the proposed ordinance, and if there was a daycare center located there, then that separation would apply.
Okay, so if there's a daycare or the community center, then, although there's a little dot on our map here, that would not be an option then for a dispensary then?
That's correct. I think that one may be there because I think there is a preschool.
Yeah, it just opened.
That just went in, and we may not have picked that up when we prepared this map.
Yeah, I've been right across the street. There's a community center where there's lots of kids' activities all the time, and a youth center in there too for kids. So that was my question. If you could just kind of confirm before we start granting permits what's around there, and make sure, are we going to have a process to confirm that?
We certainly are working on getting our information as up to date as possible so that we can track the separation requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Just to take that one step further, there's probably other places that are just as critical. And I guess my question to you is, do we have to have this marijuana cultivation or distribution center anywhere in our city? Is that a requirement that it must be in this city?
Vice Mayor Pasillo, Councilor Cavalier, I may defer to the city attorney to bolster my response, but basically it is an authorized use, authorized by law. There may be uses out there that we don't particularly care for or particularly like, but we have to make an accommodation for it, at least for it to occur in the city. We can impose reasonable restrictions and limitations on it, and that's what we're attempting to do. Of course, if the regulations that are and requirements that are proposed are not sufficient, we can certainly reevaluate those and make those even tighter, but not to the point where it would be exclusionary. Then we would be subject to challenge.
I think our exclusions aren't tight enough, and I'm not satisfied with this. In fact, I will be voting against it because it does not satisfy what I think is a tight enough restrictions on how it's done, how it's cultivated, or how it's distributed. So as it stands now, I will be voting against it.
Thank you, Councilmember Cavalier. Councilmember Sousa.
Thank you. Who is going to enforce this ordinance?
Vice Mayor Pasillo, Councilor Sousa, the primary agency responsible is the Department of Health Services. They will be the ones that will be issuing the licenses, conducting investigations, and conducting inspections.
So the state is going to enforce the ordinance?
No, the ordinance itself would be enforced by the city through its code compliance officers.
Who's going to enforce it from the city standpoint?
That would be through well, for starters, as applications came in for locations, they would be reviewed through the planning department. And any infractions of or violations of the requirements would be enforced by the community development department in cooperation with the code compliance officers.
Okay.
But there are a number of the restrictions and regulations are also able to be enforced by the Arizona Department of Health Services.
Okay. And who establishes the license fee?
The license fee for the license issued by the state is being established by the Arizona
Just
Department
like
of Health
license.
Services.
Huh? just like a liquor license.
Yes.
I'm not happy with this ordinance at all. I voted for it during the course of the election, and I'm dubious about it. I think we're just leaving ourselves into a lot of problems. Enough said. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sousa. Councilmember Osborne?
Okay, well, first of all, we all know that the voters voted for this, and this is something that we will be responsible in action of taking. My concern actually goes a little more on, and Frank started to mention it, that maybe there's some strongholds that we can do or regulations that will prevent some of the things that actually is stated in here from the state of California and the Police Chiefs Association, and that has to do with kind of the what they call a secondary neighborhood concern effect. And some of the concern I have is when we say it's a secured area. Well, what does that mean? You know, secured means it's just a tiny lock. Can we, and this may be going towards legal, can we actually state it has to be a deadbolt lock, blah, 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 blah? Can we put some regulation to that? What does secure mean? Another item would be, I hate to say it this way, but sometimes you tend to see clustering of other commercial items, say around where the dispensaries are, such as paraphernalia type of stores or adult bookstores. I mean, clustering of things could occur. So could we say where a dispensary is, we will not allow the clustering of these other type of items around it? Okay, we have specific areas in our commercial zones where, or industrial zones, where only adult type of activities are allowed. So can we now add to that section that they cannot be 1,000 feet from where a dispensary or a cultivation center is? Okay. Let's see. Secure storage, deadbolt locks, alarms, and also we didn't discuss signage. Is it possible that, you know, I would think that in the cultivation center we want it to be as stealth as possible. So when it comes to signage, is it possible that we ask that it be nondescript in a sense? You know, those are a few extra items that I'm willing to take a stance on and ask that it be thought about. And maybe legally we can't, but these are the questions I'm going to ask, because when it says here that you know, the Police Chief Association's experience with medical marijuana dispensaries in that state has resulted in negative secondary neighborhood effects such as the sale of illegal marijuana to dispensary patrons by others at a price less than dispensary prices, marijuana use in and around dispensaries, DIUs. I mean, there's burglaries, you know, of the dispensaries, robberies of the dispensaries. You know, if we can feel better that it's a little more secure, but if we just say secure, well, you know what? Somebody can say, well, here's my key, there's the lock. That's not secure, you know. So I think that, you know, I want to do what's right for the people and what's right for the voters, and this is what they want. But is there more that we can add to this, is my question.
Thank you. Councilmember? Yes, go ahead.
I was at the Planning Commission meeting for this, and I listened to some of the arguments, and there was a potential commercial grower who came in and talked with the Planning Commission on it. I support the ordinance as it's written because we have gone through this type of exercise when adult bookstores have potentially come here, when tattoo parlors have potentially come to Goodyear, and other types of, you know, maybe we went through the title loans and you know, bad credit type banking facilities. What we cannot do is to limit this to the point where our ordinance becomes unconstitutional. So we have to give some opportunity to to basically enable the voters, what the voters decided to go through. I have some concerns on how the city, I would assume that the city, that in addition to getting a state license, whoever comes into the city would have to get a city business license, and there would have to be some type of fire inspection and some type of storage inspection. And my concern, one of my notes here, is how secure is the storage facilities? And I think those are things that can be drafted in the planning department and the inspections department when they draft up regulations. We are just creating an ordinance to basically enable this activity to take place if somebody comes here to decide it. If we don't enable the ordinance, I think we'll have the opportunity to be sued because somebody will say, well, I want to, do this. So I think the ordinance is written reasonably tight, and I will be voting in favor of it. But I also want to see the staff come up with some, a basic checklist that is, both secured as far as the fire department is concerned and as far as the police department is concerned, because this is going to be a nuisance situation in our city.
Sure is. Councilmember Osborne.
I forgot to mention that I did agree with what the Planning and Zoning Commission said about the extended time frame and the larger size. Hopefully with larger size facility, then you won't have more facilities. So I did want to mention that.
Okay, Vice Mayor, can I add something?
Yes, go ahead.
In the ordinance, it states that there will be one entrance into this area, and it has, what's this, 2,500 square feet or whatever. This isn't, I don't see how the fire department would accept this. Okay, so you have fire doors. Well, you have doors that work as just from the inside out, but there's nothing to say someone can't open one of these doors and let someone in. So it isn't safe. I mean, that stuff is going to get stolen, and that stuff is going to get taken out through a back door some way, and you can't have just one door to a building. It's not a commercial building. The fire department won't allow it. I think you're asking if it's going to be another burden on our police department. I just say I'm convinced it's not right. Not yet. Thank you.
A couple things. I think some very good points have been raised by everyone here. I'm concerned about the security. I also agree with the licensing. I think at some point we're going to have to lock down the licensing, whether it's in the inspection, fire, to make sure we meet all those security requirements. But on top of that, I know we have these separations, but I'm also concerned from a C2 is businesses that cater to kids, say a skateboard shop or I'm trying to think of the other words, toy store or Toys R Us. I mean, is there a way we can, I don't want one of these dispensers close to where kids would be hanging out, not just daycares or schools, but other type of stores. Would that be too prohibitive? And I guess my question's more for the attorney to follow up on what Councilmember Osborne. Is there any way, you've seen the ordinance, you've looked at it, that we can tighten it down more without becoming, what's the term there, unconstitutional or restrictive?
Based upon secondary effects, you're going to have some studies to back that up. That's typically what comes into the realm of the adult businesses. The argument's always the secondary effects associated with the adult businesses, and there's a ton of litigation on that. So a lot of times what you have to do is you have to go out, you have to make some pretty substantial factual findings in putting those restrictions into place. I think what Joe and the group's come up with is some pretty standard, probably less controversial type distance regulations. It also applies to alcohol establishments, so it's pretty firmly set. But if there are some ideas that council has as far as, you may make some sense on the skateboard shops and that sort of thing, we can take a look at that and bring this back. So
I just prefer that. One last question.
But I need to kind of know what you have in mind.
Now, you
Go ahead, Councilmember Osborne.
so this wouldn't take a special use permit. This is not advised to be a special use permit, is what you're saying?
No, it is not.
Okay. But at this point, I would move that we continue this and bring it back. I know as soon as possible it needs to be, but I think there needs to be a few more questions answered here.
And one other question you brought up was, can you zone it out of the city entirely? That's an interesting question. I know some cities look at that. Probably looking at the context of Prop 203, that would get challenged. But one thing you need to keep in mind that Prop 203 also has a provision that if you don't have one of these shops within 25 miles, you can grow it at your house.
Yeah.
So, and that's a whole lot of other issues that the police department would have to deal with as well, as opposed to having certain specified locations where they know this activity is going on. So there's something else to keep in the back of your mind as you're looking at this proposal.
There's a valid argument. Because I don't care if you do put a dispensary in the city of Goodyear, it's more than 25 miles long. I mean,
multiple.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Let me ask this question of the council. There's some other questions, and I guess to provide the attorney with some guidance. Some has to do with other type of businesses, maybe some of the requirements that Councilmember Osborne raised and Councilmember Cavalier and the other council members have raised. Is there something that we can give you? And again, I know we have a motion on the floor now, but if we wanted to postpone that, or at least for further discussion, because I know time is of a distance. If we don't adopt something, then we've got nothing, and they can put them anywhere. Is that correct?
Well, the DHS is in this 120-day review period, then they're going to issue their regulations or finalize their regulations. They're going to start issuing licenses. So you're going to want something in place prior to that happening.
Okay, so what type of time frame would we have to? What are we looking at?
30 days in. Is it April?
Well, I mean, we could bring something back to you within a couple of weeks if we had some direction as to what types of additional restrictions you want us to entertain, which I think we got a little bit tonight. The concern is that people are already positioning themselves and trying to line things up to make application for licenses when they're issued. So it's not a matter of waiting the 120 days and then bingo, we're safe up to that point. We have a concern that we don't have regulations in place right now, and it's important to have something on the books as quickly as possible.
So do the individuals who have supposing we didn't have this, then a person who wanted to grow in their backyard, do they have to have a license? Let's say an individual, we don't have a garden or a dispensary within 25 miles.
Oh.
So would that person who wants to grow it in their backyard have to get a license?
Councilman Cavalier, they would get a registration card from the state, and then they would be allowed to grow up to 12 plants at their residence.
Does that have to be secured?
There are some, I believe it does. I think there are some minimal requirements related to that.
And if someone comes in and steals some of their plants, who's liable?
Well, I'm not sure about liability. I mean,
so as I say, too many unanswered questions.
Let me ask this, because we have to have something back within a reasonable period of time, and we've got a motion already on the floor as far as adopting an ordinance. What do we mechanically have to do to provide you direction or to put it back off?
I moved to continue. I didn't move to approve.
Oh, you did?
Okay.
I moved to continue.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a motion.
Wait a minute, hold on.
I guess we need to know kind of what we're looking at during the time of that continuance. I understand that there may be some different categories of uses that you want some separation imposed. Kind of like to get an idea of what council has in mind for that. The Vice Mayor asked a question about, can you restrict this to industrial zoning? What are the ramifications of that? We can certainly brief that and have that ready for you next time. What other issues do we need to look at?
Well, I tell you what, let me go down the line here. We'll start with Councilmember Gelser. Go ahead.
I would like to hear some comments from the fire chief and from the police chief in public before we even pass. I mean, we have some direction now, and we're more concerned with land use, but I'd like to hear what they have to say. The one door that Councilman Cavalier brought up is maybe a big issue, or it may be an issue, and we need to hear about that. So,
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question? Perhaps, I don't know how the schedule will work out, but perhaps we need a work session on this subject in the very near future so that the council can discuss it and we can get the direction that we're looking for.
Can I get a consensus to maybe postpone this to a work session? What do we need mechanically? We've got a motion already on the floor. Do we have to amend the motion?
Make a motion to continue the matter.
That was the motion I made,
Okay.
was to continue.
So we got a motion to continue from Councilmember Osborne. Do we have a second? Second from Councilman Loretano. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So you'll bring back a time for a work session, and we'll just discuss this further, because I know we've got to get something on. Okay.
We will work as quickly as we can.
Vice Mayor, can I ask another quick question? If I may, I just wondered, is there a way, since it's medical marijuana, to zone it into like medical areas? I don't know if that would work, where like hospitals and other medical facilities are? I don't know if that works.
There is, we don't have a
We
zoning.
don't have that zone.
We don't have a zoning classification for that.
Maybe that's something when we get into the work session. We'll hammer all that stuff out. Okay, thank you. Come to the information items, comments,
No, I don't think.
accommodations, reports on current events, and presentations by mayor, council members, staff, or members of the public. Any comments here from the council?
Oh, what was that? Oh, I just.
Let's go.
Sure.
Well, let's see, who do we want to, I tell you what, we started at the far right.
Ian.
Councilmember Gelser, did you have anything you would like to add?
No.
That makes it
Good.
simple then. Councilmember Osborne?
This was current affair.
Yes.
Okay. Just that actually, Vice Mayor Pizzillo and Councilmember Gosler and I attended the State of the State. That was very interesting. Also, I attended a little gathering at McLean's Trucking, which was really very eye-opening. I had no idea everything that they do at their company, but when we come to staff questions, I do have a question about McLean's. And lastly, I did go to a nice recognition for Dr. Kathy Stafford, who was one of our superintendents of the year, and I'd like to congratulate publicly Dr. Stafford and Dr. Beverly Hurley for they are superintendents of 2 of the 6 school districts we have in Goodyear, and I'm very proud that we have some great schools. So kudos to them.
Thank you. Councilmember Sousa?
Nothing.
Councilmember Loretano? Councilmember Cavalier?
We had the grand opening of the park and ride.
We had the grand opening of the park and ride, and it was screaming success with the arts people, the Arts Commission being there, and with what's an explanation of the cotton columns. And if you haven't seen those cotton columns, the artwork in that park and ride, you need to go there after dark, council members, because it's I think it's one of the best public art displays we have in the city. And the riders were all pleased. We had a great time, and the grand opening really was, this is one of the finest park and ride facilities probably in the Phoenix area. Covered parking, 400 covered parking areas, or nearly 400 covered. It was 400 parking spots, but close to 400 of them are covered, and it's one of the best I've ever seen, and it's one of the finest, they tell me, in the Phoenix area. I haven't seen all of them, but anyway, we got it done, and it was done very efficiently and very timely.
Thank you, Councilmember Cavalier. I got an opportunity to both with the Park and Ride and the State of the State. Nothing more to add to the fellow council members, but again, right now we'll go to the manager's summary of current events and reports.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's 3 items I'd like to mention this evening. I don't know if the one will be up on the screen in the near future or not, but this is about the crane company. Whoops. Can you advance it one? Thank you. I know you can't see this map. We'd be happy to get you copies. The council's, oh, you've got it. The council has received this previously. Over the holiday, I sent a letter out to the city council informing them that Crane Company had decided not to appeal the EPA's order to construct 2 additional wells because of the remediation of the Superfund site. The letter was from Crane, and they indicated that they would proceed with the construction immediately, and they asked for a 2-week extension, which was granted. This map, if you could see it, shows all the location of the many wells that are in this area, and the wells are going to assist in the remediation of the site. As you'll recall, the EPA ordered Crane to install 5 additional wells, and they fought that. They wanted to do only 3 additional wells. The city, of course, supported the 5 additional wells, and we worked very well with EPA, and EPA came to the conclusion that they had to do the 5 wells. The 2 additional monitoring wells and a new extraction well, which is EA, which refers to extraction 08, behind the Safeway and Litchfield and Indian School. That is one that will be constructed the first quarter of 2011. The important thing is that we have Crane Company working through the EPA with the understanding that this will be successful in the remediation of this site. So we are very pleased with those results, and we have been very aggressive in working with the EPA to ensure that these came to conclusion in the manner in which we wanted. In fact, the staff and the mayor actually met with EPA several months ago and had a great meeting with them, so they understand completely what the problem is and what we're trying to conclude. The basic message, the basic message that we want to get conveyed to the public, though, is that the drinking water for the city of Goodyear is completely safe, and it will remain completely safe. The second item I'd like to mention is the permit fees. I sent out earlier today to the City Council information about the total permit fees and plan review fees, and that's what's depicted up here in this chart. Collections are for the first 6 months, so that's July through December of 2010, which are the first 6 months of this fiscal year. The city is about 6% below the budget for the fiscal year to date. The budget for fiscal year 11 is about $4 million. So for 6 months, that is budgeted at $2 million, and the city has collected roughly $1.75 million. Importantly, the overages that are occurring elsewhere, and we're putting together a comprehensive review for the City Council of all the revenues of the general fund. The fact is that the city is still more than balanced in that other revenue sources, such as sales taxes, are going up higher than this loss of revenue. So the budget, there's no problem with the revenues that we're collecting, but I just wanted to point that out to you. There continues to be a lot of supply, and will continue to be flat for a while. We're trying to monitor the comfort vacancy report as closely as possible, and we just got a new report today, and we'll be reporting that to the council in the near future. As you also recall, 2011 is a year where many adjustable ARMs are coming due, so that could likely affect foreclosures in 2011. We aren't certain of what that impact will be, but we'll continue to monitor that and report to you what happens. The final item I'd like to mention is not on a slide. It's just the employment figures. It's very interesting. We've been following unemployment very carefully for the city of Goodyear, and we continue to be in fantastic shape considering the rest of the region. In 2010, the Phoenix metropolitan area is at 8.9% unemployment rate. The Maricopa County is 8.7% unemployment rate. In the West Valley, if you look at Buckeye, Surprise, Phoenix, Glendale, Avondale, Litchfield Park, Goodyear, and Peoria. This is 2010 figures right now. Buckeye is the high unemployment rate of 11%. Surprise is 10.8%, Phoenix is 10.2%, Glendale is 9%, Avondale is 8.4%, Litchfield Park is 8%, and Goodyear is 6.3%, and Peoria is 6.2%. Peoria and Goodyear for the past 5 years have been fighting for the lowest unemployment rate. In 2007, for example, Goodyear was at 2.3%, and Peoria was at 2.3%. So there was no difference, but those were the lowest unemployment rate, and that's when Phoenix was at 3.3%, and Maricopa County was at 3.2%. Buckeye at that time was at 4.2% unemployment. So the fact is that the city of Goodyear is well positioned, and with the positive news that we've been coming to you with about the Suntech, for example, Sub-Zero, for example, and the other industries that we've been locating here, and the percentage of city of Goodyear residents that are employees of those firms, including Macy's, Amazon.com, and CTCA, we're trying to keep our unemployment as low as possible, and we're having some good success. That's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we have staff summary of follow-up action items. Can you summarize those, please?
We will be following up on getting a work session scheduled as soon as possible so that we can discuss the medical marijuana and get that forward to you as soon as possible. That's basically the only item that we'll be following up on.
And I guess the follow-over on the work session, we had trying to get a time schedule for all of us.
Yes, we will.
We'll try to get that. Thank you. I think Councilmember Osborne, here's where you wanted the council members make direct inquiries of staff. Did you have?
Yes, sir. Thank you. When we had the opportunity to meet with McLean Company, they had raised, I asked them, what is their, was there any concerns or any needs by the company of the city? And one concern that they did raise was that in the future, when the mall does come, and with the past retail Christmas that we've had, let's hope that that's sooner than later, their concern was the fact that they have roughly close to 80 trucks a day going up and down McDowell Road and on the Bullard and on the Litchfield exits. And I think that proactively we need to sit down and discuss with them how we can route these trucks, because once that mall is built, nobody's going to want to be, having to mess with those semis. So I just thought that we should proactively sit down and talk with them and see if there is anything that's possible. But you do have a meeting, as you stated, coming up with Westcor, so just think that we need to keep them in our thoughts.
Thank you. We'll sure follow up on that.
Because that's an important item. They're concerned about it, and I think since they've been there so long, they shouldn't be concerned. But I can see how they feel. I was at that meeting also, and the idea of McLean, of all people, one of our really good neighbors, and they've done so much for the city of Goodyear as it is. It's a great employment place. I've never seen the morale of workers so high as I've seen in that place. And there was something else that I wanted to add to that. Oh, yes, the question came up. In fact, I think it was Vice Mayor Basillo that asked, did the recession hurt you because you're a distribution center? And they said, recession didn't hurt us nearly as bad as House Bill 1070. They lost a lot of business out of state because of House Bill 1070. And that isn't the first time I've heard that. But nothing we can do about it locally, but House Bill 1070 did not sit well with a lot of businesses outside of the state of Arizona who refused to do business with us because of it. So I just want to make that statement because the president, who is the chairman of that organization, I can't remember his name now, but he is the
Carlson.
Yeah, Carlson. He stated that was his main concern, and that was how that's where they lost the most business. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others want a direction of? Nothing? Just real quick on just a follow-up of what Dee mentioned. What I thought was interesting, and like Councilmember Cavalier had mentioned, the morale. He doesn't call himself president. He calls himself head coach. And his assistant is assistant coach. And their employees are team members. And I was impressed because when we took the tour, even the president knew pretty much all the names of the individuals. So, yeah, I was impressed with their organization. We took that tour. Very impressed. So, with that, I see the future meetings that we have here, and they may be a little off, so I won't go through them, line by line. We were talking about the future work session. But I guess at this time, I've got to entertain a motion to go into executive session?
You adjourn this meeting.
We got to adjourn this meeting first. This meeting's adjourned.
Convene the special meeting.
Then we
Call a special meeting.
Call order for a special meeting. They need I've got roll call here. Is that necessary again?
Recognize that everyone's here.
Okay. With that, can I get a motion?
So moved.
To go to executive session? You got a motion from Councilmember Cavalier, second from Councilmember Sousa. What do we need? Do we need roll call vote?
Councilmember Sousa?
Yeah. Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
For what? Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Lortano? Aye. Councilmember Gelder?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
We adjourn executive session.